Something's happening on my end here. Okay.
Welcome to the World Tai Chi and Qigong Day. I am so delighted to introduce to you Marsha Adams. She's an apprentice of mine, as well as a practitioner of Tai Chi, Qigong, an artist, and a mental health practitioner. Thank you so much, Marsha, for taking your time to share with us your story and your wisdom.
Oh, absolutely, my pleasure. I have been looking forward to this all week long.
Wonderful. Well, let me ask you, first of all, to share with us a little bit about your own journey. Without going into the full-fledged story of your life, perhaps you can tell us a little bit about what inspired you to start exploring energy, arts, and also what brought you to Qi Dao.
All right. Well, just to begin where I am, to say that I do acknowledge that this is a journey, that it's an intentional focus on creating a journey. Right? So that's where I am now, but it warrants saying a little bit about where I got started. Okay? Excuse me. So when I was a little child, 3, 4, 5 years old, I started having these experiences that now I would call them astral travel. I didn't know what it was at the time. It was just something that would happen at night when I would get ready for bed. I wasn't awake, I wasn't asleep, but I would have these literal out-of-body experiences. And I was too little to be afraid. I just enjoyed it. It was fun. I looked forward to it happening. And it made me curious, like, what is that? I didn't talk about it with anybody, but I was curious. And you know, I come from a wonderful place, the state of New Mexico, which is also known as the land of enchantment, which I have owned as kind of a moniker in my world. I come from the land of enchantment. And what's valuable there is that it's a place that is still very full of nature. Where I grew up was the Lincoln National Forest, so it's a pine forest, and I kind of ran around like a little wild Indian of the day, right? So I enjoyed the trees and the water, the rivers, the mountains, and that's always been a part of me. You know, there's a saying that you can take the girl out of the country, but you can't take the country out of the girl. So there's always that piece of me that's home, that is that wild nature expression and being comfortable in that space, right? As I got a little older, I discovered this, I would call it at the time kind of a game I played with myself. But if I were to give words that I've learned since then, what I was doing was causing a hypnagogic trance or a hypnagogic state. So that world you're in right before you go off to sleep, but you're not yet, and you have a mental control over it. And I would play in that world. It was really an interesting experience, physically, mentally. And again, I'm like 10, 11 years old, and I started seeing that the things I would create in those moments would begin to take place in my real life. And I was surprised, caught off guard, and didn't quite believe it, but still very curious, you know, and that really set in motion a world of exploring. So reading has always been, you know, my best friend. I looked for books that would give me insight to this. I've always been into science and science fiction, and then metaphysics and philosophy, and those things have always come up. You know, my favorite authors were books like The Prophet, Gahil Gopran, and Siddhartha, and Alan Watts, the book. And I was reading those things quite young, like 11, 12 years old. So they gave me a pretty solid foundation for exploring that hidden world, you know, that kind of set me up for the next culture that came around, you know, the culture of drugs. Okay, so yes, definitely I explored in that world as well. You know. And then I went on. I went to college and I got a degree in art, and then I got a degree in education so I could explore the imagery and teach it at the same time. I went on to get a master's degree in clinical counseling. So I wanted to still understand what's going on in people's minds, that makes us the people that we are. And I took a lot of experiential courses, along the way, and just always looking. And at the time, I didn't really think so much of it being an intentional journey. It wasn't until I looked back to realize I had been on a very self-directed exploration into the world of energy and energy arts. So that's where I am today.
Marvelous. And how did you end up engaging with Qi Dao and Qigong coaching?
Well, along the way, let's see, my first exposures were way back when I was in college. I took some Kung Fu classes, so I was exploring in the art of martial arts. Didn't take enough of it to get really good, but that always kind of stayed with me. And then I had a friend who taught Tai Chi, so I took some Tai Chi classes, and that was always kind of there in the background. Fast forward, I moved to where I am now. I'm in Michigan, and I'd been going to the gym, and I started noticing I didn't feel great. And I went to a doctor, and they said, your heart's got a weird rhythm. You need to stop going to the gym. You're going to overtax your heart. Okay, but I need exercise. So I began to look for what kind of exercise could I do that would not overstress my body like going to the gym can. And I found another Tai Chi school. So in a short period of time, I became a teacher in that school. So I was a beginning teacher teaching beginners. That's the level I was functioning at. And I did that for close to 7 years. It was a really nice experience. And then stress maybe would be the word I would put on it. The full-time job I had, I just needed to bring my world still. And then I discovered I was in pain. I hadn't been paying attention to the pain. But I was not feeling well. Again, say again?
Stillness is not all that it's cracked up to be. When you become still, all of a sudden, you feel pain.
Well, you become aware. It was an opportunity to really notice what was happening in my body. And, I hope what I'm sharing for the people who are listening are picking up on these little things. It's like, you can be so engaged in your journey that you don't really notice certain levels of your being. And I was really not aware of my body, even though I was teaching Tai Chi. It was another thing that was adding a level of commitment and stress or use of energy. When I stopped, then I became aware, oh, parts of my body really hurt. So in a fluke, exploring Facebook, I came across an ad from Lama Tantrapa. And I clicked on the button, and lo and behold, he called me right back. And I've shared this story before, but I'm always glad to say it again, that within a matter of, we were on like Google Look, whatever you call it, face-to-face on Google. And in a matter of minutes, our whole phone call might have been an hour. And in a matter of about 20 minutes, from following the practices that you showed me, I relieved a issue that was going on in my shoulder that had become so severe that I couldn't get my arm up any higher than about like that. And I'd been going to doctors, and they wanted to do surgery, and it was like, not ready for that. 20 minutes, it was gone. So I knew I had found one of those doorways that would take me down a path of understanding energy and being able to apply it in my life. So right there, you know, like they say, you had me at hello. You know, you had me at hello right there. Okay, right in that moment.
Awesome. Well, that is a really cool story, especially since you already had a decent amount of exposure to Tai Chi and probably some other arts. And besides, you were also heavily involved in personal development, right? Yeah,
Yes.
I'm talking about landmark education.
Right. Yeah. And I'd mentioned earlier that I had done a lot of experiential work, and I would pose it more in the area of self-development. That it wasn't really about the body, but it was about confronting and being with yourself. So along the way, Landmark, at the time when it began, it was called EST for all you old folks. And then by the time I got there, it was called the Forum. And I stayed with that school through 2014, taking different classes and teaching and becoming a course supervisor in that environment. I also have participated with T. Harv Eker and his Peak Performance School, and Harry Palmer with Star Enterprise. I have gone on a journey. I have been in the seeking mode for some time. So all of those things have been a part of where I am right now.
So let me ask you this, Marsha. How did studying Qi Dao influence your journey from the point when you talked to me for the first time?
Well, let me clear it up. It's not influence like past tense. It's still influencing my journey. That's an important thing to note. Without giving away all of the work, I would say having somebody point to the principles of energy and how to apply those allowed me to be able to take that information and look inward in a way that I hadn't really been looking before. Lama speaks about this often, that it's not a matter of having a teacher and being able to mimic what they do, but I'm going to put it in my words, finding the teacher within. You know, when you're given a principle and you know to apply how to apply it, then you become your own teacher. And so that's the biggest, you know, umbrella to put it under. A willingness to do a level of self-examination, like what's going on in my world? Where are the blocks? Where does it flow? What's the difference between those two things? And how do I move forward? So exploring has been given like a permission slip. I used to explore like, I hope nobody's noticing that I'm doing this because they'll think I'm weird, you know? But now I explore like, y'all get on the train because this is fun, right? It's a whole different, you know, approach. And I will say there's one little pattern that has just been huge, and that is making this distinction. In my life, you know, and again, I'm talking to the people who are listening, I began to take notice of the difference between wanting something, needing something, and what values, what was I holding on to that gave weight to those different approaches. And there's a lot of conversation that can be had there, but I often find myself doing this now. Oh, look, that thing looks like it'd be fun. I want that. And I kind of stop and go, okay, but do I need it? And what's the value that's making that determination? Because are there other things that I value more? I have to use time. I have to use resources. It's the only way living happens, right? So slowing down long enough to ask myself the question, you know, with intention and attention, you know, what am I bringing forward instead of just letting a want serve like a whim that drives me like the wind, you know, in any direction. I certainly lived a lot of my years like that. So giving, and I'll explain this word, but giving structure to my exploring without it being rigid. That there is still an open and spontaneous way to express the energy. You know, we talk about this, that in Tai Chi, people are taught forms, and that mostly the focus is about mimic the teacher. And when you can mimic the teacher efficiently, then you're good at Tai Chi. Where the work I've learned here is less about forms, although there are movements, there are bodily interactions to become aware of. When it's time to apply them, there's not a rigid, must look like this, must be done in this order kind of process, which suits me just fine, because that little kid that was a wild Indian running around in the land of enchantment, that still lives. I like the free form, express it however, kind of practice. So there are certainly still places that I'm growing. I would say consistency, making a decision or choosing a direction on a path and staying consistently there, not being distracted by all the other fun things that pop up, is a place I'm still learning, to bring this energy work to that. So, yeah.
As we're talking about the daily life applications of Qi Dao, let me ask you, what other principles of our art do you more or less regularly apply to your daily life?
There's this little voice in my head that sounds just like Lama Tantrapa. I just want you to know that it says this first and every time. Everything is made of energy. Everything is made of energy. So there's nothing so concrete and so rigid that it can't be transformed, because it's all energy. And when I find myself getting hung up, stuck in some emotional state, I can back up and go, it's all just energy. Another way of saying that is it's just one big dream. In a dream, we look for things that they change, they mutate, they come here, they go there. There's nothing so concrete that you have to get attached to it. So everything is energy is the prime principle. And a second one would be, it's all one thing. Mm-hmm. So whatever energy that I'm experiencing and expressing is being felt and experienced and expressed by others, and vice versa. Okay? And being present to that makes me much more conscious of the types of thoughts that I will entertain. And if I'm in the company of people who express thoughts or beliefs that I don't resonate with, another principle, okay, then I have learned how to take myself out of it or create enough of a protection with energy to not go down that rabbit hole. And believe me, I'm still learning, okay? Sometimes you get caught up in the whirlwind and off you go, but it comes back. So I want to speak, number 3 would be resonance and discerning. Those two things are a huge part of what I'm applying, how I'm applying it, because we are all human beings. What they are more than anything else is receptors and senders of energy, right? So being conscious of that and then cultivating that ability to feel the resonance in a moment, in an event, in an encounter with a person, and discern from it. And I'm going to use a word that will make more sense in a minute. Divine from that encounter. What is it I am to learn from this moment? How do I take,
right?
Yeah, there's kind of a divination. And the word discerning, it's like energy contains information.
Sure.
Yeah, when you slow down long enough to read or experience that energy, then you have the opportunity to collect that information and use it. Most of us go through life in such a whirl, we don't see that the answers to our questions are right at our fingertips. But when you slow down to that state of feeling the resonance and put your attention to discerning, something completely different comes up. So,
marvelous. So those are wonderful principles, and I can imagine they can be applied in a variety of different ways in many different areas of life. You actually pioneered another term.
I make stuff up all the time.
So can you share with us a little bit about it?
Well, again, exploring. Okay, so I love words. I write music. I'm always playing in that arena, and I was looking for a word to describe an art process that I have begun using. And just yesterday, I was watching a video, and the man on the video called himself a geomancer. I had to look that up. It sounded intriguing. So a geomancer is somebody who studies the energy of the earth. Well, I'd heard of this before, the ley lines, those types of things. So a person who does that is a geomancer, and what they're studying is geomancy. Okay, so I go, oh, okay, that word's intriguing. So I started playing with the word, and there's this field of energy study is something we're all familiar with. Like, Lama, have you heard of the term of oniromancy?
I might have heard the term. I have no idea what it means, though.
I'm sure you'll recognize it. Oniromancy is the practice of interpreting the future through your dreams.
Ah.
So it actually has a formal name. I mean, like, who knew? And then there's, like, the funny names, they come from the combination of Greek and Latin and all those things. Rhabdibnomancy. Like, who invented that?
That sounds really wild.
Yeah, and all it is talking about dowsing. It's the use of a tool to find water or minerals. Okay, so again, it's reading energy, right? And there's that. So I began to play with this idea. Well, you can add mancy to the end of anything, okay? And what it implies is that you are finding the energy, so and using it to give you information. Mancy means to divine, so to discern, right? And I want to give an example of Lama's work, and I hope everybody will do this. Go online and find through Facebook or through his YouTube page videos of him doing push hands with people. I love watching it. And here's the advantage of videos. You can slow them down. So here's something I noticed. In the world of energy, if you're watching these two people in the act of push hands, I'm watching his partner, and his partner is telegraphing in this just like big obtuse way the move he's about to make. And Lama is like, swish, swish, just sends this guy on a whirl. And when you see it at regular speed, you almost can't tell what's going on. But watching and watching, because I can see Lama has years of being a Qi Dao mancer, someone who reads the energy in the body, in the person, and can discern from that what that body is about to do. It's giving him information long before the untaught audience might be able to read, what that person is going to do. And it's just really obvious in the push hands tape. So I encourage everybody to go look at that and notice how easily that, speaking to you specifically, Lama does it. But all of us do it. All of us have stepped into the company of another person and got a reading of their energy. And it's told us, move closer, move further away. So I encourage everybody to continue to develop that. Now, what I'm doing is taking that ability to read energy and turning it into artwork. So if you think about what say the original, people carving in caves created, whether you call it hieroglyphs or pictographs. They were expressing something of the world they were in. Okay? I'm taking the energy of the people that I encounter and pulling that same energy up and turning it into a hieroglyph or a pictograph. And I've given it the name Qi Mansi Glyph or Qi Mansi Graph. So there's an image, and I'll give you a quick example of what I'm talking about. This is a small version of a drawing that I've done.
Oh, okay. Oh, intricate.
Yes, and I will explain how this gets created, because here's where it comes, the reading of energy. So if all of you out there who are watching this want to play along, here's what I would ask you to do. Get a pencil and a piece of paper, okay? You don't have to be an artist. You don't have to have any great skill. Just, we already do this. How many of you get your phone out and pick, oh, there's a pen, you pick it up, and the next thing you know, you're doodling? We all do this, right? So I'm just going to show you how to expand it so it becomes that divination type of behavior. So I'm kind of putting Lama on the spot here. He didn't know I was going to do this. You ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. I'm going to create.
I'm ready for whatever you bring up.
Okay. I'm going to create a Qi Dao Mansi glyph. Okay. And it won't be finished today, but it will be finished by the time that this interview gets aired. So you guys will be able to see how it started and how it ended. Okay? Now I'm thinking of how this gets applied when I'm doing coaching. I'm working with a client and we're looking for answers. There's that divination part of it, the discerning. So I'm going to pose to you, Lama, a question, and I'm going to ask, I'm kind of guiding you since this is our demonstration. I wouldn't be this leading if I was working with a client, but I'm going to give you an area to focus on. So if you will think about the Academy of Qi Dao, okay, so it has an energy to it, yes? Okay, and if you were going to describe the energy of the Academy of Qi Dao as a whole creation, like what comes up for you? What words, what pictures, what colors?
A tree.
Okay, great. So we start with something that looks like a tree, okay? Yeah. Now, I don't know if you guys can see this, but I just made the trunk of a tree. I'll bring it up closer when I get done. And this is where I'm stepping ahead because I'm familiar with Lama's tree, okay? What I know is that there are these components that go to his tree, right? And there is other fields that also express what is in the energy of the Qi Dao, right? So there's the first level. Now, when you began your business, when you began this academy, right, what kind of energy did it have then, right in the beginning?
A twig.
Oh, so it had little expressions. It wasn't a full-grown thing.
Right.
Those are my twigs. You see my twigs?
Yeah.
Okay. And then what happened?
And then it started growing a more solid trunk and also deeper roots.
All right, yeah, so roots that land inside of the earth, that feel into the earth, right? And what about the atmosphere around you?
It started expanding.
All right, so expanding, big opening up, right? Now, that was kind of the beginning stage. And again, for folks that are watching this, I'm doing a shortened version of how I would walk people through this process, just so that you can see the look of it. Okay? In the middle stage of your academy, if you had to describe that energy, what shapes did it take?
in the middle, meaning like the Academy has been around for about 20 years, 21 years. So you're talking about like 10 years into its existence.
Yeah.
Well, I was moving back to the United States from overseas. So I was literally just kind of replanting. It's almost like creating a graft. You know, there's a root and there is a trunk, and now we're grafting 6 branches.
So from somewhere, there was a moving around. There was a changing of location. There was a bringing something from then into the now. See, I'm just using lines to kind of express the story that's being told. There's no right or wrong to this. There is no has to look a certain way, right? Just getting a feel for what's being shared. Okay? And in the middle years, okay, what were your students like?
They were mostly younger and very enthusiastic. Many of them really liked martial arts. And so I was operating at the dojo, and we had a big dojo, and we had to do some movement practices and throw each other on the ground. Fun martial.
So, you know, I'm imagining what I know. So I know in the world of teaching that there is this world of learning how to kick. And some kicks go backwards. Okay. Sometimes it's reaching up over your head. Sometimes it's reaching for the ground.
Right.
Right. And there's all different ways that that gets delivered. Now, has your academy had any, like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I'm going to survive moments? Any trials or tribulations that have shapes or?
Yes, as a matter of fact, it had to transition from being a nonprofit organization to being a for-profit organization because it literally ran into the ground financially. So much I had to
ran into the ground. You know, definitely a clear image that kind of goes with the sense of that energy. And then what happened to it from down there in the ground?
Sprang back up.
Okay, so it got to come back up.
Yeah.
To a new expression.
You have to hit the rock bottom to push away from it.
Now can be pretty solid down there at the bottom. It can be painful, or it can be recognized as a place to grow from. Okay? So now the third tier is, where's it going? Where is the Academy of Qi Dao going?
It's becoming, well, it has already become the premier school of Qigong coaching worldwide. It, for the longest time, and probably still remains the first school of Qigong coaching in the world. And so we are expanding both our student base, but also developing the Association of Qigong Coaches. So those folks who graduated from our programs will be supported and fulfilling.
Okay. All right. So we could go on, and if I was working with a particular client and doing coaching, I might work to develop a lot of other symbols and shapes. Let me ask you this one thing. In the world of the Academy of Qi Dao, what colors are real dominant in that energy?
I would say this is a popular color, which is kind of like khaki.
Nice. Right. Okay.
Also, this kind of color.
Real deep brownish maroon tones, reds.
Oh, I'm talking about this scroll.
Oh, okay.
Black ink on kind of ivory background with a pale green frame or
Okay.
undertone.
Got it.
Yeah, and also, like you said, maroon or kind of a rich dark red, almost on the verge of infrared.
Yeah, that's good. Is there any contrasting color, something that's like when you think about when it was a struggle, was there any color that represented that?
Yes, I would say kind of bright blue, like not pale blue, but like a it reminds me of the frame of the painting, as a matter of fact, or the
Board?
tape. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. Okay, so I'm just going to hold on to those facts. Now, what I'm going to do with this board that I have on the wall is I'm going to try and show it to you a little closer so that the people who are watching this can see what actually got put on the board, because it doesn't look like you can see it. You can't see the lines that I drew very well, can you?
Not very well, but if you bring...
Okay. I'm going to bring people in close so they can see what I've created. Can you see it?
Yes.
It looks like a giant scribble picture. You guys remember when you were kids and you were bored, or you're sitting by the phone now as an adult and you're doodling, you're creating a giant doodle, okay? Now, what I do with this is the energy discerning. I'm not going to come in and just color every little box that got created. Some of those shapes will make other shapes. Some of those lines will be the outline on one side and the open space on the other. So it's learning to discern where the energy is inside of the forms. But either way, no matter how it looks at the end, what's embedded in this drawing is the story that Lama just told about it. It holds his energy because that's how it got created. And if you want, and here's another one of the practice terminologies, remembrance. I want to bring something forward. So I want things in my space that constantly remind me to have the thought that helps me bring that thing forward. So if, as a finished product, if this is hanging on the wall, you know that parts of it are talking about the expansion of the Academy of Qi Dao, that the colors and the feel and the energy flow of the lines can be a trigger for that remembrance, so that when you pass it by, even though you don't have to stop and be with it for a long period of time, just the energy that's there in the flow of that piece will bring that remembrance into your creative dreaming forward. So a new thing, you know, a new world called Qigong Mancer, Qigong Mancy, okay, Qigong glyphs, whatever you want to call it, Mancy glyphs, you know, and I would love to share this game with other people. So if there are people out there that would like to experience having this done with them, or I can give you even more detailed instructions on how to do it for yourself, I am open to playing that game, and I would love to share it. And there's lots to be learned, lots to be explored.
Marvelous. Well, fantastic. Thank you so much, Marsha. It is a fascinating exploration and innovation that you are up to. Now, that's something that I definitely would encourage our viewers to dive into. How can they contact you so that they would be able to work with you?
I'm hoping that we will have a website page where that information will be contained. And if you are listening and you have your pencil ready, you can write this down. My email address is the words, let me say it and then I'll come back and spell it. energy at Gmail. So energy, 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 INNERQI, like one word, energy at gmail.com. You can write me there and we can play.
Marvelous. Well, thank you so much, Marsha, for sharing about your story and your discoveries.
Well, one last thing, let me say that I am going to finish this painting, this creation, before this event is aired. So you will have an opportunity to see the finished product, and we'll show them somehow, we'll show them side by side so you can see what it looked like as a finished product.
Excellent. All right, I will look forward to that.
All right, thank you for your time and playing the game. You didn't get much warning on this, so thank you for being spontaneous.